Hey guys, so today we're going to be talking about point of view in a story or novel. Okay, so I want to start out with the basics. So when we talk about the narrator of a story, we're talking about the voice who is telling the story. Now that can stay the same throughout an entire book, or the narrator can change throughout a book, like we see in Wonder. Okay, now the point of view is about kind of who the author chooses to narrate the story and how they narrate it. Okay, so first person point of view. In first person point of view, the narrator is actually a character in the story. They use the pronouns I, me, and my to refer to himself or herself. They tell his or her own thoughts and feelings in his or her own voice, and they don't know what the other characters are thinking and feeling. Okay? So Wonder, for example, is in first person point of view because when August is telling his story, we're hearing it in his voice, we're hearing his thoughts and feelings, he's telling it about himself, and we don't know what like Via and Jack Will and Summer and everyone else is thinking until we get to their sections. Okay? Now, another example, I was flying along when I spotted sparks exploding on the street below. The evil shock blaster was attacking innocent people. Time for me to come to the rescue again. Angry and annoyed, I realized that talented superheroes like me never get the day off. Okay, so here we see the pronouns I multiple times. Okay, those are, oops, let me plug that in. All right, so our pronouns there show us that this person is telling the story about themselves and their own experiences. Okay, so now third person point of view, on the other hand. In a third person point of view, the narrator is not a character in the story, and they use the pronouns he, she, and they to refer to all of the characters, and they can reveal the thoughts and feelings of more than one character. Okay, so an example. As Dynamite zoomed through the explosion, a billion thoughts raced through his mind. He wondered why villains always started trouble on his day off. From a roof above the panicked crowd, Shock Blaster saw Dynamite swooping across the sky toward him. Him again, Shock Blaster muttered. Alright, so I want you to take a look back at examples 1 and 2 and answer these two questions. So example 1, whose thoughts and feelings do we know? And example 2, whose thoughts or feelings do we know? Okay, so hopefully you said that in example 1, we only know Dynamite's perspective, okay? He is telling the story himself. He is annoyed that Shock Blaster is interrupting his day off. Okay, now in example 2, we have both Shock Blaster's and Dynamite's thoughts and feelings, okay? So we see that Dynamite is wondering why villains always start trouble on his day off, which we saw from his perspective in example 1. And then we see that Shock Blaster is annoyed to see Dynamite. Alright, so let's look at a couple more examples here. Alright. So just to give some background information, the novel Walk Two Moons is about a 13-year-old girl named Salamanca. People call her Sal for short. One day, her mother leaves home forever, prompting Sal to deal with some confusing feelings. When my mother left for Lewiston, Idaho that April, my first thoughts were, how could she do that? How could she leave me? As the days went on, many things were harder and sadder, but some things were strangely easier. When my mother had been there, I was like a mirror. If she was happy, I was happy. If she was sad, I was sad. For the first few days after she left, I felt numb, non-feeling. I didn't know how to feel. I would find myself looking around for her to see what I might want to feel. Alright, so what point of view is this excerpt written from? Okay, so is it first person or third person point of view? So I'm going to look back through here, okay, and I'm going to look for those clues, like our pronouns can be a big help. And I see a lot of my, me, I. So it sounds like this person is telling the story about themselves. Okay, so I'm going to say that this is written in first person point of view, and I want you to write that down as well. Alright, so what is an example of a quote that shows this point of view? Okay, so again, I was looking at those pronouns, I was looking at all these things where they were talking about the narrator's own thoughts and feelings. So I'm going to go with this section, alright, because I'm using my I pronouns and I'm talking about the narrator's thoughts and feelings, so it's got a lot of good clues. All right, so I'm going to say, if she was happy, I was happy. If she was sad, I was sad. And I want you to write that down as well. Now, how does her mother's departure initially affect Sal? Underline 2 details that reveal Sal's feelings. Now, since we know Sal's thoughts and feelings as its first-person point of view, okay, it's a really important thing in first-person point of view, right, we can find details that show us that, okay? So I'm going to find a couple to underline. So I'm going to say, for the first few days after she left, I felt numb, non-feeling. I'm going to underline that. So you need to underline that on your paper as well. Okay, and then got another one here. My first thoughts were, how could she do that? How could she leave me? So I think that's another good one. Okay, so lots of quotes we could use, very typical with first person point of view, lots of thoughts and feelings. Okay, so I want to take a look at our next one. Becky believes she was born to play golf. After practice one day, she encounters an elderly neighbor named Donna Carmen Maria. Notice what our narrator reveals about Becky's thoughts. Okay, so Donna Carmen Maria reached for one of the clubs in the bag. She said it was like a sword. She poked the air and laughed to herself. Becky didn't smile. She was hot, thirsty, and uneasy with the old woman, who again started to play with the mole in her throat. But Becky's parents had always taught her to respect elders, and she had to respect Donna Carmen Maria, because if not, Becky feared the old woman would walk down the street and report her incivility. Becky could see herself grounded until she was as old as Donna Carmen Maria herself. Alright, so what point of view do I have here? So looking through it, alright, I'm seeing Becky seems to be our main character, but we're talking about Becky, right? Becky didn't smile, she was hot, thirsty, and uneasy. So we're talking about her, but she's not telling the story, okay? So I'm going to say this is third person point of view, okay? So now what I want you to do with number 2, okay, I want you to find a quote that shows us that this is written in third person point of view, and I want you to fill it in the little question box that pops up. Okay, so hopefully you found a good quote that showed us that this was third person point of view. We have a lot of good ones, right? It's pretty much all talking about Becky and her feelings, okay? Now, number 3, does Becky seem to like Donna Carmen Maria? Underline details that describe Becky's thoughts and deep feelings about her neighbor. So even though it's third person point of view, the narrator has still been telling us how Becky feels, okay, and how she thinks, even though Becky's not telling the story herself. Okay, so a few good ones. She was hot, thirsty, and uneasy. All right, that's telling us Becky's thoughts and feelings. Becky feared the old woman would walk down the street and report her incivility. Again, that's another one showing Becky's thoughts and feelings. All right, so make sure you've underlined those on your paper as well. All right, we're going to be doing some more practice with this tomorrow and talking about how this applies to Wonder, where we obviously have lots and lots of narrators. So if you have any questions, we'll get a chance to talk about them tomorrow.